and welcome to episode 137 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is March 31st, and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone. So, one of the most popular topics at the moment is how to work with data from SAP in a Microsoft context. SAP Datasphere was recently announced by SAP, and one of the key integration points was with Databricks, which also is used by lots of customers on Azure. From a Microsoft side, we recently released the SAP CDC Connector for Azure Data Factory and Synapse, which uses the ODP framework to integrate with SAP data. To make the integration with the ODP framework even more powerful, customers can use the SAP Landscape Transformation Replication Service, or SLT, which integrates with the ODP services and enables direct access to SAP tables. These tables then can be constantly monitored, and changes are recorded and can be made immediately available to Azure. To show us all about this, Manish Shah joins us today. But before we hand over to him, as always, let's quickly take a look at some of the news from this week. And I want to start with a blog post by Volker Butzek. Volker Butzek is one of the organizers of the ReCAP event. I think it's the third year where SAP talks about, or where the SAP community talks about CAP, so the Cloud Application Programming Model. And this year, we'll have a hackathon just before the event. And in this hackathon, we'll focus on Cosmos DB. So the idea is to create an adapter for Cosmos DB for CAP. So similar like with Postgres, there's already an adapter for Postgres available for CAP. Somewhere it says here, but now the idea is in this hackathon, we want to focus on Cosmos DB and see how we can integrate or make Cosmos DB available in CAP. So if you are familiar with CAP, or if you want to develop, if you know Cosmos DB, then sign up for this hackathon, and it would be fantastic to meet you there and to see what we can build together with CAP and Cosmos DB. The next topic is about Sentinel. We had talked about this in the past, and Microsoft Sentinel is the security framework or SIEM solution that allows you to monitor lots of different Microsoft services. And we talked about the new an SAP connector that is also available, which allows you to also connect to an SAP application. And now, what has happened? I mean, we've been working with SAP on this connection, and we've actually now certified Microsoft Sentinel for SAP. So it's now really part of the official certification program. It's also certified for RISE. So even if you're a customer that is running your SAP system on RISE, you now have a possibility to really use Sentinel in a certified way to also secure and protect your SAP installations on RISE. So if you're interested in this, definitely check this out. Moving on, the whole notion of OpenAI and GPT is something obviously that we can see now being infused in all the different products. And actually, I had a chance now. I have now Copilot running in PowerPoint. And it's really, really cool. I mean, I hope everyone gets access to this soon, but you can really describe, I mean, hopefully all of you have seen this video that Satya and the team published on YouTube. But if you really play with this and ask, look, I want to have a presentation on SAP and Microsoft integration, and you provide a few more bullet points, then it starts creating these slides. So this is really a game changer. I mean, not everything is perfect. I still keep deleting a lot of slides there, but it's really completely different way of working. And now what the team has done is they've introduced Copilot for Microsoft Security, or Microsoft Security Copilot, which I first thought, well, is this really useful? I mean, in security, you want to obviously be notified immediately if something is wrong. But then I thought right now, there's a lot of custo queries that you need to write to really combine and look in the data. And with this Copilot, what you can do, you can actually ask questions to Microsoft Secure. So you can really see, do an analysis of this and that, and maybe combine. So you can work with the data that is available to you, but you can do this in a natural language way, which I thought was also really interesting. So not only Copilot being used in PowerPoint or Excel or Outlook or whatever, but really also infusing this here in the security space. It's a start, it's a beginning, but I think it's definitely a very interesting concept that we are seeing here. So speaking, and actually all the other topics are more or less OpenAI and ChatGPT related. I talked about the announcement from Jürgen Müller about this reference architecture that he showed during the DESAG Technology Days. And then actually I also found here a GitHub repository from SAP, which talks about SAP Business Technology Platform reference architectures. And there is this basically this architecture that Jürgen Müller showed during the technology days. So you can really see how you have your business technology platform, you have your SAP system, and then it talks about how to integrate the Azure OpenAI services with your business technology platform, so you can really use this as a foundation to create some cool integration scenarios leveraging the OpenAI concepts here. And moving on, we have a similar thing actually on the Microsoft side. So actually, I was looking more and more into educating myself about OpenAI. What can you do with this? And I found this OpenAI workshop that is really focused on what can you do with the Azure OpenAI services. And it's really actually a nice introduction. So there are a lot of different labs that you can run through that guide you through the basic concepts of OpenAI. And it's really well done. So it guides you through how do you log into an Azure subscription, how do you sign up for OpenAI for the first service, how you then create your workspaces there and start the deployment. So if you want to take a closer look, I can definitely recommend that you test out this OpenAI workshop here on the Microsoft side. Or another thing, just now in April, we have started a 30 days of Azure AI roadmap. So throughout April, there are lots of different topics that we cover. So all of them, they're already, here the agenda is basically published. These links are not yet working. So they only work once it's, really April 7th or whatever. But there is already one video with John Montgomery and a few others where they basically, where was it? Where they basically talk about what is planned for this 30 days of AI here. I don't see. There is this Kickstarter video somewhere here linked, so I can definitely recommend to also check this out. It talks a little about in general what we do with OpenAI or with the Azure AI services. It talks about the integration with Bing that happened a few weeks ago. So I think this can also be a fantastic way to get some knowledge in there. And then the last topic that I want to highlight, and that's actually a perfect bridge I think to Manish and his presentation. Our friend Bartosz is again publishing a lot of fantastic blog posts. So last week we already talked about part 1 of his CDC Connector and SLT series. Now we are with part 2, the initial configuration. And you know Bartosz, it's a beautiful documented blog post that really guides you step by step through the required processes to set up SLT and CDC. So I think I'm really looking forward to the next parts as well. But as a teaser, or not only as a teaser, but actually as a good introduction to the topic, Manish will show us how it really looks when you have it set up correctly and when it's working. So with this, Manish, let me hand it over to you. Maybe you can quickly introduce yourself. What do you do at Microsoft? And then I'm really looking forward to the demo and presentation that you have prepared.
Awesome. Look, it's been a pleasure to be here. It's one of my favorite shows, the SAP on Azure podcast. So thank you for having me here. Very excited to be here. It's incredible time with everything that's going on with OpenAI, the Copilot. I wish I had a Copilot doing this demo. and I could just sit down with a coffee. But look, I think it's a hot topic. So before we get into that, maybe a short introduction. So my name is Manish Shah, and I work in the global customer success in Microsoft. I'm part of a team called Customer Architecture and Engineering, and I'm a SAP Cloud Solution Architect working with enterprise customers with their SAP implementation. Part of my job is help customers, and another key part of my job is kind of build solution accelerators and IP that could help the customers solve common problems, help them accelerate their journeys with SAP on Azure. So that's me. And if I can steal the screen. So perfect. I thought it might be a good idea because, as you rightly said, we have got a lot of interest in the data, SAP data, and a lot of new tooling that has come up on Microsoft side. There's a ton of stuff. There's not just the new SAP CDC Connector, but the documentation, the accelerator, and all of that. So I thought we should start with a high-level, view as to where you find the documentation, where you start on your journey. So the first stop is in Data Factory itself. But you can see it's Data Factory, and it also applies to Azure Synapse Analytics. So the first stop is there. This is what we call product documentation there. So you've got an overview, an architecture of all we've got now 7 connectors. I think one's missing from there. It's I think, okay. Yeah, I think it's a CDC. Okay, so this is talking about which 6 connectors we had before.
Before the CDC connector. Yeah.
And here comes the new CDC connector, which went GA October last year. So how to use it, what's the architecture there, what are the supported, what it is based on. It is based on the SAP's ODP framework. We will look at that stuff in a little bit more detail. But that's that. Then what prerequisites you need, how do you set up the self-hosted integration runtime, how you actually get going from 0 to having your SAP CDC connector set up and starting the extraction. So that's part of the product documentation, and you find that again in Data Factory, SAP Knowledge Center, and under CDC. The next stop should be what we call as the landing zone accelerator for SAP Extend and Innovate. So if you and it's always important, rather than showing the URL, I think it's important to show how to get there because that's easier to remember. So if you go to Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, and then if you get into the scenarios, you should find one scenario, which is SAP, and then expand into that, innovate with SAP and Azure, because this is not the typical infrastructure, virtual machines and disks and that kind of stuff, but we actually innovating with the data and then get into SAP and data. And this is something that we've released very recently in the last sort of week. This is a 3-part documentation. This is not product documentation, but this is once you decided you want to bring SAP data to Azure, this is going to help you accelerate your journey. So for instance, the first documentation or first piece of the series is talking about what are your SAP data sources. If you're a SAP data expert already, you know this very well. But then for those who are fairly new to this area, what are the design considerations, what licensing you should be aware of, and what are the sources, for example, ECC, S4HANA, BW, both flavors, and what type of data is exposed in each of the system. So once you get that sort of level set, the next stop is finding how do you choose. I like saying with great choice comes great confusion, because if you have a lot of choice, you saw we have 7 connectors. So how do you choose from them?
Which one?
So we have put down.
Sorry, didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So with that, we've laid down some basic. How do you get going on a journey? Starting from how do you get on a proof of concept, choosing the right business cases, defining the goals, defining what SAP applications systems are involved, and slowly getting into the weeds of what SAP system, what's your data, where the data is lying. Is it sort of physical tables you're trying to extract, or are you trying to extract logical objects like CDS views, maybe SAP provided extractors? So it's all going to guide you through that journey, and hopefully it will accelerate your journey. Once you get through that, we then get a little bit more detail now and say, if you had data in SAP HANA, and you wanted, let's say, full data and manual data, what connector you can have, and you can have SAP HANA connector. If you wanted a full load, but also you wanted change data capture, and you have the CDC. So basically, wherever you need the CDC capability, you've got the SAP CDC connector, and that's the topic of today. Finally, on that page, we go into much more detail there, and we look at what your SAP source application is, what type of data you're fetching, what connector is possible to fetch that data, and then we'll look at what's supported, which objects are supported, and we go a little bit into what prerequisites are needed in SAP side, what is the performance details, and is it capable of handling large amounts of data. So finally, we get to the third page in there, and this is all about optimizing, tuning, and if you come into problems, how do you troubleshoot that? And again, this is the more we learn, the more the customers start using, we will keep improving upon this. But right now, we've got pretty solid foundational stuff there. The general good practices, for example, always connect using the SAP group instead of connecting to an application server. If you're a SAP person, you know this already very, very well. But this is because we are now looking at people from data expertise, Azure expertise, and SAP. Everybody tried to use this feature. We thought it's a good idea to lay this very, very clearly. So it goes at a lot of detail. How do you improve the performance for various connectors? But then I think that's a good resource to look at.
No, absolutely, and it's really, really amazing the amount and quality of content that you and the team have created there, and especially I like what you just said. With great choice comes great confusion, and that, I mean, that's the case. The thing is, choice is relevant because we have very different customers. Some customers like approach A, other customers like approach B. So we need to have this choice, but then we also need to have guidance, like what is the best practice for me as a customer? And this documentation is exactly about this. So I really love this table that you showed, and the different diagrams there to guide me as a customer, to really help me. What is the right tool? What is the best tool for my specific scenario? So it's really amazing, and it's fantastic to constantly be reminded on the beautiful amount of documentations that we're creating here. So really cool.
Absolutely. And I think just forgot to mention there's a likelihood that you might end up with a scenario where you have more than one connectors possible, and then we say, if you have multiple connectors, this is your suggested decision direction. For example, if you had these 3 connectors for a specific scenario, we would suggest you start with the leftmost, which is CDC, because it gives you much richer capabilities to begin with.
Nice.
So the next stop is you already mentioned Holger. That's great. Bartosz, he's in action. He's already started writing blogs on this specific subject. I love reading his blog. It's really thorough and in simple language. So that's the first part of his blog, talking about the overview and architecture. And it's what I like is it's in a bite-sized document rather than creating a massive blog. He's created a series of blogs, and it's impressive. Just in last 7 days, he's got 2,000 plus views. So this is definitely a hot topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we had Ulrich Christ on the show already 2 times, and also these videos are one of the most viewed videos already in our blog, in our podcast series here. Because, yeah, as you said, I think this whole, how do we work with data from the SAP side? How do we integrate this into the Azure data lake, basically, so you can work with different Microsoft tools on this data? I think that is a very hot topic, and a lot of customers are asking for this. And obviously, we can clearly see this reflected in the page views and the questions that we are getting from customers.
Spot on there. And that's the blog you were showing just before we got, at the beginning. So I won't go into that now. And I can't wait. It just published, I think, a couple of days ago. I can't wait to read the next part of his blog, to be honest.
Yes.
So with that, let's get into a demo. But before that, I think if I borrow my demo video for a few seconds, I just wanted to sort of level set with the whole premise here. So if I just go back a few seconds, yeah, and this is the whole remit, if you like. So we have got 7 connectors already. This is the choice depending on what you want to do, where you want to do, and that kind of stuff. We have already got 7 connectors. Some of the popular ones are the table connector, the HANA connector. CDC is already in huge interest right now. So these are the 7 connectors, and they allow you to connect to different layers and different applications. For example, you've got the BW Open Hub connector, which leverages the BW Open Hub. HANA connector, if you want to read data straight from the database using HANA ODP connectors, that's your connector. That's SAP table, which you connect to the SAP NetWeaver layer to read tables from underneath the SAP system there. And today we're going to focus on the CDC connector. And if I just skip a few seconds, this is a very high level overview of what CDC is. So CDC stands for Change Data Capture. It predicates, or it's based on something called SAP ODP framework. And what is ODP? ODP stands for Operational Data Provisioning. It's an SAP tool. It's a product that basically it provides a framework so that you have producers of data on one side and you have consumers on the other side, and it essentially acts like a broker, and it keeps a track of which consumers are accessing which data, and it keeps a track of their watermarks and that kind of the subscription details of each of the consumer. It exposes a rich variety of sources, and it's brilliant. The way ODP works is brilliant, and a lot of SAP tooling is based on ODP. As you can see there, it exposes SAP ECC extractors, ABAP CDS views. If you were on S4HANA, BW4HANA, they do have a ton of out-of-the-box CDC views, and that's your logical objects. If your data was it can be exposed via CDS views. That can be connected to. You can connect to BW, HANA views, or you can connect to SLT. So that being the topic of today, we'll just get to another slide in a couple of seconds where we will see what the demo is made of for today. Oh, and there's one more there. This is just a logical view. You've got the database tables, you've got SAP data dictionaries, and then you've got logical objects on top, as I was saying. You've got CDS views on top, you've got extractors on top. You can have standard extractors. There's, again, a ton of standard extractors provided by SAP. You can create your own extractors. And then you have got SLT. And these are all supported sources from the ODP perspective. So that's I think that's the level set of what capability we have, what is SAP ODP and what SAP CDC Connector does. Now, in the demo, and I hope we have the demo gods with us today, what we're going to see is I've got the scenario we're talking about is SLT. So I have got an ECC system in which which is going to send the data to SLT. All I have done in SLT is created a brand new mass transfer ID, and that's all. I've not added any specific tables to the SLT configuration. Just create RFC destination to connect from SLT to ECC and create a mass transfer ID, which is based on ODP. On the other side, I've created a pipeline in ADF. You can create the pipeline in Synapse. It works in a very similar way. The pipeline, simple, very simple. You can really do a lot of creative stuff with the ADF or Synapse pipelines, but I've done really simple stuff. You've got a activity there, which is basically a source. It connects to SLT, and when you get into the screen, you will see you see a number of sources there, which are basically data providers or provider types, and it's also called as ODP context. So you will see the CDS views, each of the supported sources there. You would see there, you've got a CDS, you've got SAP, the standard extractors, and then you've got a number of SLT. These are the SLT mass transfer IDs that I have configured in my SLT. So I think this is all putting together. You've got a block there which will ingest data from SAP SLT. So how it is going to work is when we do the initial run, it's going to go and we specify in the pipeline, we specify what table or tables we want to extract, and it's going to go to SLT and say, we've got a consumer who is interested in this table. In SLT, in ADF, you say whether you want full data or just delta or full on initial and then continuous delta. So I'm going to set the full plus delta, in which case the first time I run the pipeline is going to knock on the door of SLT. SLT will in turn knock on the door of ECC, get all the records in the table. Yep. Then I go back, create some changes in ECC system, and then run the pipeline again. And along the way, hopefully I'll be able to show you some more details as to how you kind of monitor this, how do you troubleshoot this, and so on and so forth. The second part is a sync data, destination. It can be ADLS, it can be Synapse table, it can be really anything. I mean, for practical reasons, you want to probably land the raw data in a data lake instead of Synapse, but I've just created a Synapse so that we can nicely show you the queries and that kind of stuff. So that's a lot of stuff, and let's get to the demo. So that's my ADF. Before we do anything, oh dear.
Let's refresh and see what happens.
And I've just created, I've just launched an ADF window where my pipeline is, but I also want to show you how stuff works. from a Synapse perspective. So I'm just trying to merge two things together. But then you can do everything completely inside ADF. You can do completely inside Synapse. It depends on what you're using today. So if I was to create a new pipeline, I just show quickly what it involves. So you create a data flow, you create a new data flow, you add a source, and we say inline. You can create a data set before and then reference, or you can create an inline. And then I'm going to type CDC, and it shows me CDC. And then it says create a link service or pick one. I'm going to pick the one that I've already created. And if I was to test, we can also look at the link service. It connects. So this is how ADF connects to SAP SLT, in this case SLT, but it needs integration runtime along the way. And this is so you can install the. This is where you actually, this is a VM where you actually install the integration runtime software provided by Microsoft, and also SAP .NET or Encore libraries, so that this is the library that connects a client to SAP applications. You select group ideally, because then you get the benefit of load balancing. This is very similar to the general SAP logon pad entry. And then this is an important element there, the subscriber name. And this is how this instance of the link service is known by by the ODP framework. So ODP framework will know this as this consumer. So if I cancel that, and let's move on and look at the source options. This is where you will see the number of data, the provider types, so the context like CDS, SLT, and so on. This is the name of the object. We'll see all of that in detail. This is the three options that I mentioned, which is full on the first run, and then incremental, or full or incremental only. So if you wanted to, if you had a massive table, what you can also do is you can just set to incremental change only, so that it creates a subscription. It creates triggers. It starts monitoring the changes, and then you can load the full table asynchronously in another way.
Perfect. Yeah.
So that's the source. And then let's quickly look at the sync. Sync it can be anything, so it's nothing specific to SAP, but I'm going to show you a Synapse sync. Select the Synapse service, and there you go. It's going to connect to my Synapse instance. You specify the schema name and table name, and it's going to load the data into those tables. So for now, let's cancel all the changes. Go to pipeline that I have created already. And let's dive in. Okay, there we go. So let's load all our objects here. So this is I'm not storing anything in the ADLS, but because my destination is Synapse.
So this is potentially the target database where we want to copy the data from the SAP to.
Yeah, spot on. So in my case, I've got in my destination, it's a Synapse table. So what I'm going to show is basically this is the right query, because I've also got a truncate query somewhere. I don't. Okay, so we don't have any records right now.
Yes.
And then we run this pipeline a couple of times and then see what happens there.
Okay.
But you can also do, if you had stored the data in a Delta Lake, you can also run this. So it's essentially a file system, files in a file system, but then it's got a metadata, and then you can query that. So it's a cost-effective option of landing your raw data. But for now, we focus on that. And now let's go back to the pipeline. We'll keep the pipeline off, and then we will, yeah, okay. Let's kick this off, and then we'll get to some of the details. But basically, I'm calling the context as ECC, SLT, ECC, ADF, and the table as EKKO. If you pay attention to that, I'll show you what it means in an SLT system. So the pipeline.
Now you're doing a full load, or is this? Yeah, I guess
this is the full load.
Yeah,
and this is the cleverness of the ODP framework, because it knows that this subscriber or this consumer is coming here for the first time.
Yes. Yeah.
And if the same consumer comes next time, it just hands over the delta. So you don't have to change your setting from full to delta. It just clever.
Nice,
now the pipeline is running. So if we go back now in my SAP system, and if you remember the name, this is my SLT. And if we click on that button there, this is what I mean. This was the name, the Q alias was there in the context.
Okay, yeah.
So this is how you link everything together, basically. Now, if we close that and take a look at what's happening inside SLT transaction LTRC. I didn't show you this screen before, but I didn't add this table myself. As soon as ADF made a call and said to ODP
I need this
framework and said I want EKKO, it created this
dynamically, basically. So yeah. SLT noticed, oh, I haven't queried this table before, so let's put it in here. And then the next time, I guess, yeah, it'll just reuse this information from here.
Absolutely. Now, what it has also done is this is transaction ODQMON, ODQMON. This is where you monitor the delta queues. Now, if you see, there is a queue already. There are a few subscriptions there. There is the object I've filtered on EKKO here. And if we look at the subscriptions, one should have been added just now. Oh, sorry, if I refresh. Oh no, this is UTC.
31st,
yeah. So this is created when this subscription created when I started the pipeline. Now it says, and one thing, you always want to take the calculate data volume, and it's really interesting, and I'll show you how it helps you. But right now it's telling us we have one request, and if we go into that request, which is that, it's telling me there are 4 units, there are so many rows that's being fetched, and you can then even drill down into each of these to see what the units are, and then if you clicked into each one of the unit, you can see individual EKKO record in a table. It might take a couple of seconds. One thing I didn't do today is I left my SAP system running on standard HDDs. Something you should never do.
So it's a little slower than usual.
Yeah, I just forgot to change that. Yeah, and this is all of the purchase order header documents, all records.
Yes.
So let's go back to requests. And another thing I wanted to show is when you want to keep an eye on this status there. Right now it says confirm, but when you start, you see a wheel spinning, or not spinning, it's just a wheel, which means this is the time when SLT is trying to read data from ECC. When the reading, so because it's a two-part process, when the reading is finished, you see that a small wheel and a small green tick. That means it's still working, but the reading part has been finished. And when the consumer has read all the data, then that changes to a full green tick. So very subtle, but it's incredibly valuable to know what's happening there. Now, with the blessings from demo gods, our pipeline has succeeded.
There you go.
Now, what you see there is exactly those many records, 1,600, 1,191. So that's the records that have been read and so many records written. So let's go to Synapse, run the same query.
Run the query again.
And those many records.
There we go, 16,000. Yeah.
And let's see let's just query top 10 by sorted by that. So the last purchase order we have got there is ending 779. If we were to head back and switch to an ECC system, I've got a ME21 transaction, and I'm going to be a bit lazy and just copy an existing purchase order and save. So the number now is 780. Now this is where the calculate data volumes is interesting, because here it's telling me, am I in the right screen? Yeah. Let's change that to subscriptions only. Yeah, and we only see one now. And then it's telling me there's one row change because I created a purchase order, and we're looking at purchase order header. So we just created one order. There's one data changed. Again, something incredibly important to know when you're playing with the data. Now, assuming that purchase order has gone through, this should change to 2. So now it's tracking how many changes are there, created by the provider, but not read by the subscriber. So now.
So in here, we would probably have a scheduler or something like that, so that every 5 minutes or every hour or every day, depending on how frequently you expect the data to change in the SAP system, we would run this.
So right now I'm triggering it manually, but we can also look at what options are there. That's a good point. So let's trigger that. You'll have seen I've not changed anything. So just run the pipeline as is. But that was a good question. So if you want to create a schedule, you can do that, or so you can create a new trigger. And it could be a schedule. I think if I remember, the lowest is 5 minutes.
Oh, and there we have every 15 minutes.
So you can either set that, or you can set to a tumbling window, which means it, as soon as the first run is finished, it creates another run.
Okay, yeah.
These two are quite interesting, and probably one of your favorite topics as well there, Holger. You can, it's interesting. You can, if you can install a ABAP SDK for Azure in your SAP system, and then when things happen in SAP, let's say background job finished or something like that, you can say write a file to a storage account, for example. That's the simplest thing. But then this can go to your storage account, poll for that file. And as soon as you get that signal file, it triggers the pipeline. And obviously, you can also create custom events there. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with this.
Yeah, really powerful.
So before we check anything there, I want to go back and just make sure the number has gone down from 2 to 0.
So that now the consumer has fetched, and now the ODP framework or the queue knows, okay, I handed everything over to my subscriber, so I'm good. Really nice.
Absolutely. And this is, if you see, that was the first run. when it handed over 16,191 records, and this is where it handed over only 2 records.
Only, yeah.
So if we now head back to monitor, see what's going on here. Pipeline succeeded. 2 records written.
2 records, nice, yep.
Now, if we were to head back to, I don't know what's happening there. Okay, so let's run this query again. And now we have 2 records added. If we sort, we should see 80 and 81 on the top. That's it.
There you go. Yes. Yeah. Cool.
So I think that's the demo basically of this end-to-end.
No, fantastic. And I think it's always really nice to see this live. And I know you had prepared a backup video, but it's fantastic to see this live, and it was working actually. So I mean, obviously that is something that a lot of customers are already using. So I think it has proven that it's very stable. But I've done enough demos to know that you never know if something breaks somewhere, especially in a demo environment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of moving parts there, because when you want to run this, you want to start a new subscription, and then you have to do things to start that, and delete the rows in your destination table just to be able to show everything. Otherwise, it can be a mess. It's not a problem if you have a running system, because it's just running. I think I just want to show one more thing there, and this is also quite powerful. We saw how easy it was to create the template, the pipeline. But then what we have also done is provided a number of templates. So you can use some of these, and I'm sure this is an evolving ground as well. But all you can do is here is just point to your link services, and the whole pipeline is created for you.
And I can still go in and do some modifications and enhancements. Really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do all of that. You can, I think, as I have done, you can also parameterize your, so what I've done there is, we don't want that now. We want that. And if you see, these are the parameters that I was passing: context and object name. These are the default values. But then you can go in there, handle the parameters inside from the pipeline parameters into the data flow. When you get into the data flow, this is the source. And then this is where you specify those parameters. And then in the key columns, again, you can parameterize that, highly parameterize, and then you have one big pipeline that is generating a number of, or that is triggering other pipelines, and you can do all sorts of cool things there. Same with the Synapse. You can point it to the sync that you want, and then you can also parameterize all of that.
Really cool. No, I mean, it's very obvious. This is extremely powerful, and I think this integration, or this leveraging the ODP framework, leveraging SLT in this specific context, and then having the connection via the self-hosted integration runtime into ADF and Synapse, and then once I have the data there, then I can do all this other work. I can model the information that I have here. I can work with the incoming data. I think that's extremely powerful, and obviously, again, a very strong story also that resonates well with customers.
Absolutely.
Cool. So Manish, I think that was really a fantastic overview, and showed what is possible actually. And again, I think getting 16,000 records to Azure worked very well. Adding 2 more was also very easy. So yeah, thank you so much for doing this. And I'm sure, I mean, we will certainly follow Bartosz's blog post and
Absolutely.
see how he ends up where you are already now. But I'm sure there will be more additional things happening. I know you're working on the documentation, so I think that's also fantastic how this is evolving. Yeah, so thank you so much. I think that was a great demo, and yeah, I would be happy to have you again on the show sometimes in the future.
Lovely. Well, thank you for having me, and can't wait to, yeah, as you said, read Bartosz's blogs and be here again next time. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Manish. Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.